Hi everyone, in this video I'm gonna share with you how to use frames in your landscape photography. And for that I am here in Switzerland. I traveled with my motorhome here in the beautiful region of Wallis in Switzerland, and as you can see behind me there are like really beautiful mountains, beautiful area, very remote areas, amazing hikes, and that's just a region I can recommend you to visit at least once in your life. You won't regret. This is actually the region where there is the famous Zermatt. So visit it if you can. You're not going to be disappointed. And for this, we're going to go to a place where there are like amazing frames to frame the beautiful mountain that I have behind me. And to finish, I will show you how to post-process those kind of images on the computer. So let's go and enjoy. Don't mind the law, hard on our heels. No one's gonna come for you. I believe we're here for a while, then we die. But I believe this love is stronger than you and I. Alright, let's start speaking about gear. So the gear that you need to do this type of photographs where you are using frames, it's fairly simple. You need a tripod. A tripod will be helpful if you're shooting more in the evening or in the morning and in general. But in this particular case, it will be very helpful when you need to have a very stable shot, because then you want to combine the photographs in post-processing afterwards. And you want to make sure that everything aligns, your foreground, your background, your frame, and everything. So a tripod will definitely be your best ally here. But that's not it. The other thing is obviously your camera, so your body, and also a wide-angle lens. A wide-angle lens will be really amazing in this situation because it will help you shoot with like a lot of distortion, and that's actually the beauty of a wide-angle lens. And in case you guys are interested in how to use a wide-angle lens properly, then I invite you to check out this link here. This is a video I recorded in the Lofoten Island when I'm explaining how to use a wide-angle lens properly. That's very helpful, and hopefully you find it useful too. So let's get going and start speaking a little more about the frames themselves. I believe this love is stronger than you and I. There is actually almost an infinite variety of frames that you can use when you want to do this type of photography. You can use pieces of wood, you can use branches, you can use trees, you can use doors, you can use mountains themselves, you can use rocks, anything you want, anything that can be very useful and that can just frame something perfectly and beautifully. In this particular case, I'm gonna use those type of pieces of wood. So these are like dead trees that are laying here and that are like perfectly placed to actually photograph this mountain on the background. They're gonna be extremely helpful and extremely beautiful with amazing effects in post-processing. And you will see we're gonna go there now and take a look a bit more on how to compose this type of photographs. I found my first composition, and this is actually the tree that you could see behind me just before. And this is a very interesting composition. I'm shooting in landscape orientation, and I'm sharing here a video. You can see that I have here the frame, the wood frame that comes and that like really frames the picture so that it creates some effect and an effect of depth when you're looking at the picture. And we have here a leading line that goes all the way in the direction of the background mountain, which is our main subject in this case. And to me, that's really a wonderful composition. That's really something amazing that I like to do. These are compositions that changes from what we see normally, that are like a little more dynamic in my opinion, and that are really interesting to see, and people are not so used to it. So when they see something like this, they're kind of attracted to it. And actually you need to be extremely precise with your tripod when you're placing yourself in this type of compositions, because if you go too close, you might not be able to focus on every part of your photographs, and it might be even tricky to place everything perfectly. So for example, in this case, so here we don't see the top because my video is cropped, but normally I have the top of the tree which is visible here, and this part is a bit wider and the bottom as well. And this is something I wanted. I wanted to really see the shape of the whole tree as I was capturing the whole picture. And this is really the effect that provides this framing and depth into the image. And then when you're placing yourself like this, you should place yourself, make sure that everything falls into place, and then you can play with your zoom. I'm actually now shooting with my XF 10 to 24 millimeters, and I'm playing with my zoom to make sure that I have all the details I want and I have just what I want in my frame. And in this case, I have the wider angle at 10 millimeters, and I am shooting now at 12 millimeters at f13 and at 1/125th of a second. It's during the day, so I need a rather fast shutter speed. So I now placed myself in portrait orientation to show you the difference. And I'm basically at the same location and taking just the composition in a different orientation. And as you can see on the video here, I do have here my tree. So here the video is cropped, so you can't see it very well. But normally there is the tree here and there is the other part of the tree here on the left-hand side and covering all the way to the top. And we do have here this the lines in the trunk here that are like going all the way towards the mountain, which is right here on the background. And to me, that gives a really amazing effect. And as you can see here, because I'm using the wide angle lens, I do have a very strong distortion effect, especially at the bottom here, where basically the trunk of the tree is kind of a little bit stretched, a little bit extended, and that gives an amazing effect in my opinion. So that's definitely the type of composition I can recommend you when you're framing something in your landscape photography. One very good tip I can recommend you is to use bracketing. Bracketing is a method that helps you create HDR files, high dynamic range files, and basically what it does is that it helps you to take pictures with your base exposure and pictures with 1, 2, 3 more stops above your base exposure, 1, 2, 3 more stops below your base exposure. And then after you combine those 3 files in your software of preference, and then you will get a file with a high dynamic range, that will help you have much more flexibility in recovering highlights and recovering shadows, and that's extremely helpful. And in this particular case here, in where I am placed now, there is the trunk right in front here is very dark, and basically I want to make sure that I can recover it and have the best quality over it. So I'm shooting HDR and I'm shooting here with 2 stops difference, which is something I recommend to get a very good dynamic range once you combine your files. And the highlights in the mountain in the front are not too strong, so it's actually okay to not have such a strong dynamic range recovery, but well, I prefer to have it, and in this case I use it, and that's something extremely useful. Let's imagine you are shooting against the sun. That will be something almost mandatory if you want to recover your highlights and your shadow on the foreground at the same time. I actually moved from the other tree because there is another tree, which is this one, which is right on the back of the other one. I'm not sure if you can see the previous one I was shooting at before it was there. And there is one more technique I wanted to share with you, which is extremely important. It is called focus stacking. Focus stacking will help you get your picture pin sharp from front to back. And this is something indispensable in this type of photography. Basically, what you want to do is to shoot first at f10, f11, f13, rather higher f number, higher aperture, so that you make sure you have something which is more in focus in general, like a less shallow depth of field. And then based on this, you will have the focus on various points in your photograph. So on the foreground, on few points, on the background and foreground are the most important, but it's always helpful to shoot like 2 or 3 more photographs like in various points so that everything is in focus. And then once you have this, you can combine them in your software of choice, whether it's Lightroom or, well, actually you can't do it in Lightroom. You have to use Photoshop to do this. But once it's done, it's going to be perfect. You will have a shot which is like sharp from front to back. And in this type of shot, in my opinion, it's really mandatory, obligatory to use if you want to have the best effect possible. Now you saw how to take amazing frame landscape photography while being on site, and you saw that it's not that complicated and that actually it gives amazing results. But now we're going to move back to my camper and I'm going to show you how to post-process those images so that you can get great final results. So let's get going. I'm finally back in my camper and I wanted to share with you guys the 2 techniques that we discussed on site earlier, which are the focus stacking and the HDR. So I'm going to switch to the computer and let's speak about this. I also wanted to remind you that if you guys like this video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. That would be amazing and the YouTube algorithm likes it. And also, if you like my content, you like my videos, and you like the tips I'm giving you, then feel free to subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below, or even in the corner of this video, there is a small logo that you can click on to subscribe much more easily. Thank you. So as you can see here, I do have 9 images, which corresponds to 3 sets of 3 images. That corresponds as well to the 3 different focus I made on those 3 sets. So the first thing I am doing is to create the HDR on these images. And to organize this a little better, so I select each of the sets and then I will stack them together. So for this I do Shift and I select the images, and then I do Command G to group those images. Once this is done, so first of all, we can see that there is a different focus on each of these images. This one is the foreground is in focus, this one the background. This one is a point right in the middle, that must be here, this piece of wood here. And now that I have my 3 stacks, I will do Ctrl H to automatically start the creation of the 3 HDR files based on the sets. All right, our HDR are created. And the first thing that I'm gonna do with these HDR files is to process them in order to be able to flatten them and have much more flexibility to process them afterward. In order to flatten them, I tend to decrease the contrast a little bit, like raise the shadows. So basically remove some shadows, a little bit of black as well, maybe a little too much shadows, keep a little bit of contrast. And then I apply to the 2 other pictures, which by selecting them by Command or Control select the picture. And then I do Command Option S to apply the changes. And once I do have this, I open the file in Photoshop and I go on click right, editing, and I open the pictures as layers in Photoshop. And this will help me to open them as one PSD file in Photoshop. Now my three files are open in Photoshop, and I need to combine them together in order to create the focus stacking and have a file which is in focus from front to back. And just before we do that, just to show you that we can clearly see that here this file is focused on the foreground, this one is focused on the background, and the last one is focused somewhere in the middle, most probably on this piece of wood here. So I'm coming back, and the way you do it, you basically select your three images and you go in Edit in Photoshop, and then you go in Auto Blend Layers. From there, you choose either panorama or stack images. In our case, we want to stack the images, and we click there. It will align the layers and then process them. And as we can see, some masks have been created here, where basically it selected the areas in focus on each of the pictures. And if we now zoom in, we will be able to see that pretty much the foreground is in focus, the bottom of the image, and the top as well, while before we had each of the images with a different focus. And from there, I can apply all the changes and all the adjustments I want in my pictures. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful, that you learned something, and that you can practice and try to create such kind of photographs if you like it. And with that, I wish you good luck with your photograph, and see you next week for new adventures.